It was a quiet Thursday morning in the upscale Breeze Hill neighborhood of Vista, California. The sun cast gentle rays on freshly mowed lawns. Children laughed on their way to school, and the scent of garden flowers floated in the air, serenity in Suburbia. But beneath the calm surface, horror was about to erupt inside a two-story home on Diablo Place. 24-year-old Carolyn Neville had just returned from dropping off her 6-year-old son at school. A devoted mother and wife, she was unaware that someone was already inside her house. A man hiding in the shadows. A man who once wore the uniform of the United States Marine Corps. A man armed with rage and a deadly weapon. That man was Derlin Ray Threats, a former Camp Pendleton Marine sergeant. What followed inside that house would shake the community to its core and make national headlines for years. Threats had been caught in the act stealing video games. Instead of fleeing, he turned on Carolyn with horrifying brutality. Using a pair of garden shears found in her garage, he stabbed her over 70 times. The attack was so ferocious, so calculated, that even seasoned detectives were shaken by the blood-soaked crime scene. Neighbors heard her screams. Some dialed 911. Others peeked through windows in disbelief. Moments later, deputies spotted a man vaulting over a backyard fence, barefoot and blood-stained, a stun gun tucked into his pants. It wasn't long before Derlin Threats was in custody. But the arrest was just the beginning. What followed was a long, grueling trial filled with conflicting testimonies, tears, and the raw anguish of a family shattered. Threats claimed he was innocent. His wife wept for him in court. Yet the evidence was damning blood. On his clothes, the murder weapon tied to his prints, and a trail of violence that pointed only in one direction. How could a trained Marine, once trusted to defend his country, descend into such darkness? Was it a moment of madness or the reveal of a deeper hidden rage? This is the haunting story of Derlin Ray. Threats in the young woman whose life was brutally stolen in the place she should have felt safest, her own home. Classification: murderer. Characteristics: former camp. Pendleton Marine Sergeant. Robbery, torture. Number of victims: 1. Date of murder: September 1st, 2005. Date of arrest: same day. Date of birth: 1981. Victim profile: Carolyn Neville, 24. Method of murder: stabbing with knife. Location: Vista, California, USA. Status: sentenced to death on August 18, 2010. Derlin Ray Threats, a former Camp Pendleton Marine sergeant who tortured and fatally stabbed a young mother who caught him stealing video games from her Vista home, was sentenced to death on August 18, 2010. Derlin Threats, 29, was convicted last year of first-degree murder with special circumstances in the Septon 2005 death of 24-year-old Carolyn Neville. Neville, who had just returned home from dropping her 6-year-old son at school, was stabbed more than 70 times, including final blows from garden shears the defendant got from her garage, said Deputy District Attorney Patrick Espinoza. Espinoza called the killing sadistic, just a level of horror with unspeakable acts, and said Threats was found at a nearby home with the victim's blood splattered on his clothing, providing damning, compelling evidence of guilt. Man gets death. Sentence for torturing, killing woman. Derlin Threats, 29. Convicted for Septon 2005 death of Carolyn Neville, 24. 10news.com. August 19, 2010. A former Camp Pendleton Marine sergeant who tortured and fatally stabbed a young mother who caught him stealing video games from her Vista home was sentenced to death Thursday. Derlin Threats, 29, was convicted last year of first-degree murder with special circumstances in the September 1, 2005 death of 24-year-old Carolyn Neville. Neville, who had just returned home from dropping her 6-year-old son at school, was stabbed more than 70 times, including final blows from garden shears the defendant got from her garage, said Deputy District Attorney Patrick Espinoza. Espinoza called the killing sadistic, just a level of horror with unspeakable acts, and said Threats was found at a nearby home with the victim's blood splattered on his clothing, providing damning, compelling evidence of guilt. Jurors recommended that Threats be put to death. During Thursday's sentencing hearing, the victim's husband, Stephen Neville, addressed his wife's killer. "This is a very vicious, one of the worst catastrophic events to take place in my life. I'll not rest comfortably until I see you take your last breath," he said. He said he regrets not having been able to stop the crime. "Not being there that day has left a psychological scar I'll never recover from," he said. The couple had only been married for 13 months, and he said his wife's death was hardest on her son, who was 6 years old at the time, and who's not going to have a mother by his side while he grows up. The defendant did not speak during the hearing, and his wife was barred from testifying because she allegedly insulted a sheriff's deputy. Defense attorney Will Rumble unsuccessfully tried to persuade Vista Judge K. Michael Kirkman to grant a new trial because of jury misconduct. He alleged that jurors considered the fact that Threats didn't testify in his own defense and conducted outside research. Kirkman disagreed, saying a juror who complained about her fellow jurors may have misinterpreted many things that were said and done. The jurors did all that we could possibly ask of them. Outside court, Rumble called the evidence of jury misconduct overwhelming. "So not only did Mr. Threats lose today's society and our self-government form of government lost today," he said. "That's why Lady Justice is crying." Jury recommends death for Derlin Threats. December 4th, 2009. A jury on Friday recommended that convicted murderer Derlin Ray Threats be put to death for the 2005 killing and torture of newlywed and young mother Carolyn Neville in her Vista home. Threats, 28, a former Camp Pendleton Marine sergeant, was convicted by the same jury of 8 men and 4 women last month. He did not make a statement following the verdict Friday. He looked toward his wife and family members seated in the Vista courtroom as he was handcuffed and led to jail. San Diego Superior Court Judge K. Michael Kirkman will decide, John 5, whether to accept the jury's recommendation or sentence Threats to life in prison. The jury deliberated just over 6 days. One female juror held her hands over her heart and closed her eyes as she answered yes to whether she agreed with the verdict. There were no outbursts after the reading, although several supporters of 24-year-old victim Carolyn Neville nodded with apparent approval. "I think Mr. Threats got what he deserved," said the victim's husband, Stephen Neville, outside the courtroom. "Our family is extremely unmanly happy with the verdict." The pair had been married only 13 months when she was killed. Stephen Neville, who has since remarried, said he lives in the same home. He successfully petitioned to change the name of his West Vista Street from Diablo Place to Via Angelica. Carolyn Neville's body was found Sept. 1, 2005, with as many as 70 stab wounds. She had just dropped her 6-year-old son off at school on a quiet Thursday morning and returned to her unlocked Vista home where she was ambushed. Blood stains and other evidence suggested the struggle with her assailant stretched throughout the 2-story home. Authorities believed the popular Shadow Ridge Country Club employee had walked in on a would-be burglary. Her screams for help broke the late-morning quiet on a weekday in her upscale Breeze Hill neighborhood and prompted 911 calls from neighbors. Deputies who responded spotted a man vaulting Neville's backyard fence. They caught Threats a few houses down. According to testimony, Threats was shoeless, wearing blood-stained socks, and had a stun gun and a bloodied wooden stick, similar to a hammer handle, stuffed down the legs of his sweatpants. Threats' family maintains someone else killed the young woman. They said evidence proving his innocence was not allowed in court by the judge. Threats' wife Isabel said outside court Friday that there will be an automatic appeal should the judge sentence her husband to death. "Of course, we will fight this," Isabel Threats said, holding a box containing a belt and the many ties her husband wore to court during the 6 weeks of trial and jury deliberations. Derlin's innocent. He did not commit this murder. Justice, some say, is never truly enough when a life has been taken so violently. For Carolyn Neville's family, the guilty verdict and death sentence for Derlin Ray Threats offered some measure of closure, but no verdict could ever erase the pain of a life stolen, a mother silenced, a child left without her gentle voice. The courtroom echoed with grief and rage. Carolyn's husband, Stephen Neville, stood before the man convicted of murdering his wife and said words that pierced deeper than any legal judgment. "This is a very vicious one. I'll not rest comfortably until I see you take your last breath." His voice, though trembling, carried the weight of unimaginable loss. The couple had only been married for 13 months. Their dreams, still fresh, still growing, were cut down in a single morning of madness. Derlin Threats remained silent through much of the proceedings. He did not testify. He showed little emotion. His family, clinging to the belief in his innocence, promised appeals, insisting that the system had failed him, that the real killer was still out there. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the jury's decision was unanimous. Years later, the case still resonates not just for its brutality, but for what it represents. How violence can invade the most unsuspecting places. How evil can hide in plain sight. A respected Marine became a murderer. A peaceful suburban street became a crime scene. And a little boy lost his mother forever. But Carolyn Neville's story is not just one of tragedy. It is a stark reminder of the strength of those left behind. Her husband, her family, her neighbors all became voices for justice. Their pain was real, but so was their resilience. As the sun sets on Diablo Place today, the house stands quiet once more, but its walls remember. The community remembers. And somewhere a grown child remembers the mother he lost too soon. Let this not only be a tale of horror, but a call to protect, to remain vigilant, and above all, to never forget the names and faces behind the headlines. This was Carolyn Neville's story, and it must never be silenced.